souhaiter également la bienvenue dans cette soirée inaugurale donc de la 11e déjà Université d'été de la E-santé, avec, vous l'avez remarqué dans la programmation, chaque année un regard de plus en plus global et mondial sur cette rupture qui ne cesse de progresser dans le monde, rupture technologique, et cela fait des années qu'on montre des outils ici de plus en plus innovants, rupture économique, et on a cessé d'en parler pour ceux qui ont assisté aux tables rondes de la matinée sur nos modèles de santé. Il y a un autre modèle économique à inventer, c'est tout le modèle de soins qui est à repenser. Et enfin, rupture d'usage, technique, économique et usage pour les patients et pour les soignants. On sent bien depuis quelques années qu'on est à la croisée des chemins dans ce domaine. Les technologies de e-santé prennent vraiment leur envol. Elles ne sont plus réservées à quelques personnes ou aux plus techos d'entre nous. Désormais, il faut vraiment se le mettre en tête, c'est toute la population mondiale qui est concernée. D'où le thème de cette année d'ailleurs, 7 milliards de e-patients. Et on a donc la chance d'accueillir ce soir parmi nous, pour cette conférence inaugurale, un chercheur qui observe attentivement ce phénomène depuis chez lui, en Californie, mais aussi dans le monde entier. C'est Mark Bachman, que vous pouvez applaudir. Il vient de l'Université de Californie, Irvine, à l'Institut des Télécommunications et Technologies de l'Information. Merci d'être avec nous ce soir. Et on va vous écouter avec beaucoup d'attention sur le regard que vous portez sur ce domaine. Je vous en prie.
Merci, thank you. Bonjour. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for coming today. I'm sorry I don't speak French. I have to speak in English, but I think the ideas will resonate across all languages. I learned this morning that President Macron's initiatives, his high priority initiatives, include e-health and Internet of Things. So I think we have a lot in common, and we all see the future in the same way. Can I get a monitor? Yep, thank you. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the University of California where I work, and then we'll get into the story. I am in the institute called the CalIT2, California Institute for Telecommunications and Information Technology, and we do a lot of work in digital technology focused on Internet of Things and focused on e-health. I also teach there, and I work with many startup companies there. Okay, I think perhaps you know where California is. It's on the east coast of the United States, and it is the 6th largest or 7th largest economy in the world, and a lot is happening in California right now. We are down in Southern California, near LA there, and my institute is called the University of California, Irvine. It's one of 10 University of California campuses. The University of California campuses are world famous. They're very high-level, world-class institutions, and I'm very proud to be part of that. But there's 10 of them, 10 total, and the newest campus is UC Merced, and University of California, Irvine is the second newest campus. We're right down below Los Angeles and just above San Diego. So I'm going to give a little advertisement for coming to visit me. Everyone in this room is hereby invited to visit me in Southern California. I promise if you come, I will show you a great time. There's a lot to do in California. So you know California because, well, maybe you know Disneyland, right? So that's where Irvine is, right next to Disneyland. And maybe you know the beaches. We have some very world-famous beaches in Southern California. Beautiful places to go swimming and surfing and have a good time. In addition, we have some beautiful mountains and desert, and we have the city, Hollywood nearby and so forth. So there's many, many things to do. So please come and see me, and then we can talk about technology and collaboration and have a good time too. We like to say that in California you can go skiing in the morning and go surfing in the afternoon, and that is absolutely true. And UCI is 5 minutes from the beach, so it's a great place to work. This is my institute, the California Institute for Telecommunications and Information Technology. Our focus is on doing research and moving research into industry, particularly research on digital technologies. And our mission here is to work with the university, the basic science of the university, and convert basic science into technology that can be commercialized. You know, at the university, we have a bit of a problem. We have a bit of this ivory tower problem we call the ivory tower, where sometimes we are in our own world, our own ivory world, and we do not get our research results into the public where it can be useful. And so Cal IT2 was created by the governor of California 15 years ago for the purpose of integrating that basic science and turning into technology that can be moved into the real world. So I spend half of my time doing basic research in technology and the other half of my time working with companies and startups to turn that basic research into technology that can be used. I like to tell people when I go to a scientific conference, sometimes I wear my professor hat and I go there to show off my results, to show off my data. And sometimes I wear my Cal IT2 hat, and when I go then, I'm shopping. I'm shopping for new technology, shopping for new ideas that we can turn into technology for business. So that's enough about UC Irvine. As I say, the invitation is open to all of you. I would love to show you around. I'm a CEO, Chief Entertainment Officer. I will show you a good time, so come and see me. Now let's get started with the talk. Before I begin the talk, I want to start with this quote that I like to, that kind of puts things in perspective for me. When we talk about e-health, it's not about doing medicine, it's about more than doing medicine. And in my opinion, if we call someone a patient, we're already too late. We need to, the power of technology, the great potential, it extends far beyond the time that we put someone in a hospital and call them a patient. So please keep that in mind as we talk about what we can do with technology. Excuse me, can I get a monitor here for the slides on this? Where did our
Yes,
tech go?
they're just trying to do it.
Oh, okay.
It will be fine in 5 minutes time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I do a lot of work in medical devices. Orange County has over 400 medical device companies. We do a great deal of products for surgery, for monitoring, and so forth. And traditionally, our companies, they have a business model that I will call top-down business model. And in top-down approach, we develop a very exciting and very advanced technology, but it's extremely expensive. And so it only can go to major hospitals and institutions. And eventually, everyday people like you and me, we can access that technology. So think about an MRI scan or something like this. You only use an MRI or a CAT scan maybe once or twice in your life because it's so expensive. And so that's a top-down approach. And the business model for that, for medical device companies and companies working in this space, is they are going to make a few products, but they're going to charge a lot of money for those few products. But the paradigm is changing now. We are going to what we can consider a bottom-up approach. And in bottom-up approach is we develop products for the consumer, for the stakeholders. And in there, maybe the products aren't quite as good as in the top-down. Maybe they're not as accurate, but they're very inexpensive, and they still provide good information. And in this case, the products are provided to the consumers, and that helps them participate in the healthcare ecosystem. The business model is very different. The business model here is sell a lot. So this is where we're seeing a lot of activity in Southern California and in California in general as we move to this new paradigm in the healthcare ecosystem. And by the way, this is possible because of the advancement of technology that we've seen over the last 20 years. Technology wasn't always this cheap. Suddenly, in the last 20 years, it's amazingly inexpensive, and so now we can see these new types of approaches. Now, there's great power in the bottom up, and let me draw your attention to one great example, and that is the example of YouTube. We all know YouTube, right? YouTube is a perfect example of the power of bottom-up technology. 20 years ago, YouTube did not exist, all right? And most of our media that we were given was controlled by a few media outlets. When I was growing up, there were only 4 television stations in the United States, ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS, and that was it. So we all got our content through a very few number of channels. When video sharing became popular, the content was very poor. You know, it's not very good. And even today, it's not very good. But there's so much of it that YouTube has now become one of the dominant sources of content for video in the world. It was created in 2005, and now there's over 1 billion hours of content consumed each day using YouTube. And, very interesting, 400 hours of content are uploaded to YouTube every minute. So that is phenomenal. There's no way that the old model, the old top-down approach to creating and distributing content could possibly match the power of this bottom-up approach. And so the rest is history. And now companies like YouTube and Netflix and so forth are now the dominant players in distributing content. So when you enable this bottom approach, you can do extraordinary things. And this is actually something we see over and over again in modern technology, especially digital technology. And people have studied this and done many interesting talks. And this is a concept of exponential growth. Digital technology, by its nature, will become exponential. This is something we see over and over again, and it's something that we'll also see in e-health. But this is an important curve because it's easy to misunderstand how exponential growth works. On the far left, we see the beginning of a technology. Oh, by the way, the yellow curve represents a digital technology, and the red curve represents a conventional way of doing something. And the red curve is linear thinking. It's the way we always do things, and we're going to just do it harder, or maybe add more resources and so forth. And generally, we will grow in a linear fashion with conventional systems. But digital technology can grow exponentially, and it generally tends to do that. But at first, we have the valley of disappointment. At first, it doesn't seem to be doing as well, and then you'll feel like it's a waste of time to be putting so much interest in technology when the conventional system is outpacing the digital technology. And I think that's where we are today, actually, with healthcare, because the digital technology has not yet proven itself. We're seeing a lot of great ideas. Today I saw many ideas, and we see a lot of opportunity, but in fact, we're still below where digital technology cannot deliver today the promise that and cannot do what conventional health technology can do. However, if it follows this curve, it will very quickly surpass conventional technology in the value that it can bring to the consumer. At some point, we get the iPhone moment. The iPhone moment is when the new digital technology surpasses the conventional technology. You know that the iPhone is only 10 years old. This is its 10-year anniversary. It's only been here 10 years, yet it seems like we've had it forever. It's so compelling, and so everyone I know has either an iPhone or an Android, and we do most of our interaction with the world through that device now. But it's been only 10 years. So we can expect just really very exciting things once the e-health technology hits that iPhone moment. And that may happen sooner than we think. That may happen within the next 5 years. So this is a curve you'll see technologists like myself present many times. This is a very common presentation in Silicon Valley and so forth, because this is something we all recognize, the exponential nature of digital technology. All right, so let me talk a little bit about eHealth. I'm a director of the eHealth Collaboratory at Cal IT2, and we call it eHealth. But the E in eHealth, it's very important to me that I always make this clear when I give tours and discuss eHealth. The E in eHealth stands for empowerment. For me, this is about empowerment, that technology can be used to empower people. We're not going to solve problems. We're going to empower people to solve problems. There's a big difference. So when I talk about eHealth, I'm talking about empowerment of health. Okay, so we have many projects at eHealth. This is me on one of our crazy projects. And we have, some of them are really crazy. But eventually, every project that we do must conform to our guiding design principles. I'm going to go over those with you. But let me also say, every project that we do at my center is a collaboration. We do not do a project without a collaboration. And the reason for that is engineers are very poor at designing health solutions. Engineers don't understand it. So we need to work with people who know, the stakeholders who actually work in the field. So we work with the medical school, the nursing science school, sociology, psychology, and so forth. And that's very important because sometimes in technology you think you know everything, right? You think you know it all, and you don't. And so we have to make sure our engineers and our technologists have some humility, and we can work together. So that's why we don't call it the eHealth Center, we call it the eHealth Collaboratory. Okay, these are our guiding design principles. It's very important to me, and it's important that our students understand this. Number one, technology should help empower health. Remember that technology is not the end, it's a means to an end. And it's one of many approaches, not just technology that is going to go into the solution. Technology is one of many approaches to health empowerment. Two, technology should have real value. That means at the end of the day, these projects should be based on evidence-based research. You know, they should actually really help make people better. We don't want to just create fun gadgets that don't do anything. Even if the technology is cool, if it doesn't work, then we shouldn't be doing it. Number three, technology for eHealth should integrate into human life. That means it should be usable where we live, work, and play. You shouldn't have to go to a special place just to access the technology. We want our technology to be available to everyone where we are and doing the things that we do. And finally, the most important, technology should preserve human dignity. This is one that people forget so often. Remember, we are dealing with very vulnerable populations. And it's very easy to think, oh, I'm going to create some technology that's going to solve a problem and forget about human dignity. I have seen some terrible things that work very well. I've seen technologies, dog collars that we expect our seniors to wear so we can monitor when they're taking their medication. Yes, compliance is important, but we don't want to force people to have to wear dog collars with electronics on them just so we can monitor their compliance. So we have to be careful and make sure that whatever we design, it preserves human dignity. So those are our 4 guiding principles when we design technology at eHealth. So technology should empower health. When I say this, we mean we want to empower the patient to take a greater role in participating in the management of their health care. We also want to empower the care provider, the professional, so the technology can help them as well. And we want to empower the community, the people around the patient and the people around the professional who are also part of the health ecosystem. So technology empowerment occurs in the entire ecosystem, not just the patient, not just the physician, but everyone in between. Now, eHealth, as if you've worked in this field, I know many people are in this field, you know it's inherently multidisciplinary. And so you have to be able to work across many disciplines: information and computer science, psychology, medicine, neurology, cognitive biosciences, arts, and so forth. I'm going to give you some examples of some eHealth technology. And there's so many examples, we could spend all day here. I'm going to just pick a few, and I'm going to show you some examples where engineering is used to create some eHealth technology, some examples where we use information and computer science, and some examples where we use social sciences to create some eHealth technology. So I'm breaking down my examples into 3 types of technologies. The first is engineering technology, hardware that can do some very interesting things. I'll show you that. And then I'm going to talk about some IT type of technology. IT means primarily where we're collecting data and we're using data. And then finally, I'm going to end this with my favorite example of a technology using social media to bring better health to everyone. And by the way, in the process, I'm going to introduce a demographic to you, and that is our aging population, the seniors. If you want to know the future of health, of eHealth, then you should know this demographic. This is the demographic that's going to drive eHealth. Okay, we have people who have cancer, we have people with diabetes and so forth. There are many problems out there. But in reality, this is the one that will drive it. And the reason why is this is where the market is. And I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, so let's get started. So let me talk a little bit about engineering, how engineering can be used to produce products for healthcare. And in this particular case, we are seeing a really exciting trend to move technology that we use to create microelectronic circuits, use that same technology to build medical devices. And when we do that, we're able to build things that are really, really small. And that's a good thing for devices. And here's an example of a really, really small device that was manufactured using semiconductor manufacturing process. This is an example of a microelectrode array. And on the tip of this electrode array are 8 wires. And this electrode array is implanted in the brain to monitor the brain activity. And it's so small that it doesn't cause any damage to the brain tissue. But furthermore, it's made out of a soft, flexible material so that when the tissue moves, as it does not cause damage to the tissue. This is manufactured using the exact same manufacturing processes that are used to create computer chips. So instead of creating computer chips out of silicon, we're now building microelectrode arrays intended for implantation out of biomaterials. So that's an example. Another example, perhaps you've heard of point-of-care diagnostics, lab on a chip. The idea behind lab on a chip is that we can miniaturize a chemistry laboratory. We can take all the tubes and reagent reservoirs and we can shrink those down. Again, using the same manufacturing techniques that we would use to build computer chips, we can now miniaturize a fluidic system. We call that microfluidics. When we do that, we have the ability to take a large lab, miniaturize it, so that now we can do automated testing. But more importantly, we need a much, much smaller volume of sample. That means on 1 or 2 drops of blood, we can do the analysis that would normally take a very large sample of blood to do. And because everything is smaller, the analysis happens quicker. So the idea is that we can build these things so that we can do 5, 6, 7 tests on a small disposable unit deployed in the field. So for in developing regions, for example, or places where we don't have access to large laboratories, we can do those tests. And this is a very exciting area. A lot of people doing work in this area. And this is another example of where we use this miniaturization technology that we borrow from the microelectronics industry and use it to build products for medicine. Taking that same idea further, we can build these on flexible, stretchable substrates. And here's an example of a smart Band-Aid. This Band-Aid has microfluidics in it, so very small fluidic channels that we can move fluids around. But now this is designed to deliver fluids to a wound. For example, we can deliver therapeutic agents or saline and so forth. And furthermore, this can be integrated with electronics. You can see in this picture here, there's electrodes and electronics on there, so that we can also monitor the wound as well. So the idea is that this is for wound monitoring and wound therapy in the field. So instead of a very passive dressing that we put on today, we can now have an active device that delivers therapy and monitors what's going on. And my last example I want to show you is a hearing aid. This is an interesting hearing aid. It's a very small hearing aid. It's about 2 millimeters in diameter. And it's a hearing aid that makes no sound. We call it a silent hearing aid, which is very surprising because the idea of a hearing aid is that you amplify sound, right? And this one makes no sound. Well, the problem with hearing aids is that they're large and bulky. People don't want to wear them. And the reason they're large is because they make sound. And if you make them too small and put them in the ear, the hearing aid will hear its own sound and will get feedback, and so they don't work very well. So what you need is a hearing aid that makes no sound. But how can you help someone hear? Well, the way this works is it drives the tympanic membrane directly. This is a micro motor, and that motor touches the tympanic membrane. It actually touches the umbo, which is one of the bones in the middle ear, and it drives that bone, and so it drives the middle ear directly. So you don't need sound to drive the tympanic membrane if you have a motor. And actually that's much more efficient, because when you create sound to drive the tympanic membrane, you're wasting energy. You're creating sound, and what you really want to do is drive the middle ear, and this drives the middle ear directly. And so in that way, you can get sound transfer to the cochlea without creating any sound at all. So you get actually the signal to the cochlea. And it works. We've actually implanted this, and here's an example of the very first implant. That was me being the first volunteer to try this out. And there's my colleague, Dr. Hamid Jajilian. It's a semi-implantable, means it can be implanted and removed. And it's put into the ear, and then it drives, in this particular case, was driving my tympanic membrane directly. The beautiful thing about this is that it worked very well. It was like having an iPhone or some earbuds in your ear, except that I could hear everything else too. I had normal hearing as well because it doesn't block the ear canal. So that means the airflow goes in there, it doesn't get wet and moist, it stays dry. And so it's actually a great way to build a hearing aid. And so these are being developed right now. Okay, so now let me turn our attention to the second set of examples, and that is the use of computer technology and IT for science, for medicine and health. And that's the idea of using software, computing, AR, VR, human-computer interactions, IoT, and so forth to empower patients to participate in their health. So this is a very simple example, and this is the kind of thing you're going to see the most examples of in e-health. As you look around, you're going to see many, maybe hundreds of devices just like this. This is an example of a device intended to monitor a patient that has dementia. And that way, when they get out of bed or they fall down and they wander around and get lost, this will alarm the caregiver that this person has left their bed, or they're not behaving in the way that they normally behave. And it uses a small sensor that is worn on the by the patient, and then there's a little module that it communicates with and lets it know that what's going on. So this device was invented and produced by a 16-year-old boy whose grandfather has dementia, and so he wanted to provide a solution for him. Now, he's a very bright young man. I know him personally, and I will say he's very smart. But this technology could be invented by almost anyone with a college-level engineering background. These types of technologies are so common and so available now that you can produce many versions of this type of device. And that's why I say, as e-health explodes, you're going to see maybe hundreds of devices just like this, because the barrier to produce them is so low. So that means we have to start to become connoisseurs of technology. There's going to be too much out there, and it's going to be confusing. Everybody's making these things, and we have to start to get sort of our taste buds. We have to learn a good wine from a poor wine, or a good technology from a poor technology, because they are so easy to create. Here's another example of a monitoring device. This one is intended to monitor pregnant women. It's attached to the tummy of an expecting mother, and it monitors when the baby kicks. And typically, for a healthy baby, it should kick about twice an hour. You should feel something happen about twice an hour. And expectant mothers are trained right now to lay quietly and count the number of kicks. And this way, they can wear this, and it will count for them. And this uses some nice soft sensor that gets put on there, and of course it transmits the data to an iPhone or a tablet. And so this is another example, very similar to the first example, where we're using consumer level electronics to build this. This could be built by anyone. The barrier to building this is not that high. A third example of monitoring, this is a sweat sensor. It uses electrochemical sensor attached to some electronics to monitor the analytes in the sweat and record and send that data to the cloud as well. So we're seeing a theme here, right? Monitor something, send the data to the cloud. Monitor something, send the data to the cloud. And we're going to see a lot of those types of devices. And this is part of the whole Internet of Things kind of concept, that we're monitoring things and sending that to the cloud for further analysis later. Now I'm going to take a quick change in my discussion, because I want to introduce you to a demographic that is driving e-health, okay? As I said, e-health will affect everybody. It will affect diabetics. It will affect children. It will affect all types of diseases. But this is inherently driven by a market. That's one thing we have to keep in mind about e-health. Remember, it's charge a little, sell a lot. It's a bottom-up approach. So the market forces dominate how this field will go. In the opposite approach, where the market is basically our hospitals or the government and so forth, then that's who's driving the development. But right now, we're going to be driven by the market. And the market that is the strongest for this is the seniors, so the people over the age 65. Now, you know that people over the age 65 are the largest consumers of healthcare, but they're also the ones that we're going to be developing products for. So it's good to get to know this demographic. If you want to be in e-health and you want to be making money at e-health or making products for e-health, maybe doing startups, then it's very important that you get to know this demographic. Okay, so what do we do when we get older? Okay, so this is what we do. We watch television maybe, and maybe we do some painting and play games with our friends, read books, play cards, do jigsaw puzzles. These are kind of things that if you Google, old people activities, you're going to see these types of things. Okay, we go fishing, right? Fishing and have tea with our friends and so forth. And of course, probably the number one thing that we do is take care of the grandchildren, right? That's a very popular activity for both the parents of the children and the grandparents. So there's more that we should do, though. We should rock. We should be rocking, okay? We should be living life in a way that's very healthy. That's very that brings energy to us. And by the way, rock and roll is good for you. I'm not being facetious. It really is. There's actually a lot of studies that show the benefit of music for health, especially as we get older. And furthermore, music promotes socialization, and music stimulates movement. It's very strongly linked to movement. In fact, if we were playing music now, I would venture to say that most people in this room would start moving, even though you don't realize it. Your foot might be tapping, your head might be shaking. So we definitely move to music. Those are healthy things. So, but there's a catch, okay? It's not enough to listen to music. Listening is good, of course. It brings a sort of peaceful state of mind and so forth. But to get the benefits, these neurological benefits I described, you actually have to participate in music. You have to do the music, okay? So that's a little bit tougher, okay? Because musical instruments are not intended to be played by people who are untrained or people who have disabilities and so forth. So, well, technology can help us. You know, technology can help make the participation of music a lot easier. For example, we build fabric-based sensors to make soft, compliant clothing and toys that can be turned into musical instruments. And so, I'm sorry, the videos don't work, so I'll just describe the video. Here's an example of one of our fabric sensors, and when you touch these sensors, beautiful music comes out, and you can control the music by touching the sensors in different ways. Now we can turn that into all kinds of new types of musical instruments, and this is an example of two of my students. The student on the left is playing a guitar, and the student on the right is playing Peter the Anteater, which is our mascot at the University of California, Irvine. It's a soft animal, and as she squeezes Peter the Anteater, she's able to participate in a duet playing music with the first student. So this is the first student who is trained in guitar, has full dexterity of her hands, can play the guitar, and the second student who is untrained in music, able to participate. So now we can get that participatory requirement for music to get that benefit. Now, second thing I want to tell you is that we're going to be playing video games when we retire. This is the grandma of the future, and we're going to see more and more seniors participate in things like video games that we don't normally associate with seniors. And it turns out that video games are good for you as well. And there's a lot of scientific studies from very reputable journals such as Nature and Science and Scientific American that have shown the cognitive benefits of playing video games, okay? Now, there's more than cognitive benefit. There's actually physical benefit if you do this right, because you can design video games to help you do assistive technology, to help you do rehabilitation, to help you do exercise and so forth. However, and a lot of studies, MRI studies and so forth have shown that. However, there's a lot of ways we can use video games to help us. For one thing, games are fun and diversionary, so people will are willing to experience a lot greater level of discomfort while they're playing a video game. They promote movement. A lot of video games promote movement. They can provide mental challenges. They can be very social. They can stimulate emotions. Video games are quantitative in nature. They provide short-term and long-term goals, and they can go at each person's pace, and they can adapt to individual needs. So this is actually a very powerful technology, video games, for health if we apply it the right way. Now, it turns out I do work with a lot of projects where we do video games for health. And I work with game designers, and this is the problem that we have. Game designers, they want to build an awesome game. That's the one. They want to build something amazing. And the first thing I have to let them know is that this is not about your video game. This is about health. So we have to focus on what is the health outcome we're trying to accomplish? Is it more exercise? Is it movement? Is it cognitive? And so forth. And then design for that outcome, not for an amazing game. And that's a real problem that we have. So what we really want is we want to focus on accomplishing the health goal. We want to look for non-obvious ways to accomplish this activity. Build in something to invest with. This is another thing. It's not about having a cool multimedia game. It's about your consumer investing in that game. After they play it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, they should want to play it again and again and again, because almost all of the regimens that we're going to use video games for are long-term. It's going to take place over many weeks, months, or even years. And so we want our consumers to invest in the game, and that means building in lots of short-term and long-term goals and rewards into the game. And so this would be a typical game for health, some sort of exercise. We call this exergaming. Where you might have exercise machine connected to a video game that gives you rewards, keeps track of how you're doing, and encourages you to do better and so forth. And you can share that with your friends and family, that sort of thing. Okay, I want to give you one success story on this. These two very handsome young men are my former students. They both received PhDs at the University of California, and this glove is the glove that they invented, and it contains those fabric sensors I just showed you, but it also connects to a video game. And what it happens is, this is intended for post-stroke rehabilitation. Now, when someone has a stroke, you know, they lose motor function. Very commonly, they use motor function, and they lose typically the function of a hand, and so they can't move their hand again. Now, it's very difficult to regain that function back, but it can be done, but it takes a lot of intense physical therapy, and it's very difficult to do. You have to move these hands. It's very hard to do. So typically, when the patient has finished at the hospital, they get sent home, and they get an instruction sheet that says, move your hand 1,000 times a day. Okay, so some patients actually are very determined to do that, but it never lasts very long, and so they never receive the full benefit of physical therapy. So in this particular game, the patient wears a glove, and they play a video game. In fact, it's a music video game, and I'm sorry the video doesn't work, but this is a Guitar Hero game. If those of you know who Guitar Hero is, the third most popular game franchise. Guitar Hero plays music when you touch your fingers, but you have to touch the right finger at the right time. And as the game proceeds, the patient moves their hand and touches their fingers. Well, we did 2 clinical trials on this, and we found that patients recovered 3 times faster using this system over conventional physical therapy. And the reason is pretty simple. It's just that they're more motivated to do it. And the motivation comes because they're no longer having to think about the fact, oh, I'm touching my hand 100 times. They're actually playing a song. And more importantly, every touch, every movement is quantified. So it's all stored, so you can see your progress over time. And keep in mind that physical therapy is a very slow progress activity. It's like losing weight. It takes a long time to do it, and it's very easy to get discouraged. But when you have quantitative data that shows that trend over time, you can see that you're getting better. And in fact, the measurements that we make on the hand correlate with standard box and blocks measurements for hand function. So if you see you're getting better at this game, that means your hand really is getting better. So they have successfully produced a spin-out company, got FDA approval to sell this, and they're now being sold to clinics and directly to the consumer. So it's a perfect example of e-health targeting the consumer to help them become part of the ecosystem. The consumer's still seeing their physical therapist, but now they can bring something home with them and share that data with their physical therapist. Now, the last example I want to talk to you about is the use of social networking to bring about improvement in health. And social networking is also technology, it's software. And we have some very interesting applications of this for healthcare. Now, the idea of connecting people is very powerful, but when we have digital technology, we can connect in a totally new way, and I want to talk about that next. Okay, but let's go back to the seniors, because the example I want to talk to you about is a social network for seniors. So let's talk about these seniors, okay? The seniors that we're looking at are the baby boomers. In the next 10 years, most of the demographic are going to be the former baby boomers, and now we call them the silver boomers, right? They're turning silver. And this demographic is quite comfortable with technology. And there's significant differences between this generation of seniors and the generation that we're familiar with. This generation is much more willing to do things for themselves, much more comfortable with technology. And the social identity and their image matters a lot more. They don't want to be considered, they don't consider themselves old, okay? The people I talk to, they say, what are all these old people doing in the room? And they're all the same age, but you know, you don't see yourself as old, right? And another interesting thing is this demographic would rather be with people who share their interests than people who are their same age. So they don't identify with age, they identify with interests. So it's a very new demographic, very exciting actually, because it means we have the opportunity to be very innovative. This is Mick Jagger, he's 72 years old, and he's still on stage rocking, okay? So this is a very good example of the kind of demographic we're dealing with. Don't get me wrong, everyone gets old and we all die, but the mentality is different with this newer generation of seniors. Okay, now let me point to one particular zero down into one type of person in this demographic, and that is women over the age of 45. Now, there's a saying that says, the best insurance for old age is a daughter. And that's because, frankly, daughters are the ones who are the most common caregivers when we get older. So if you have a daughter, good for you. As you get older, you have someone who's probably going to help take care of you. In fact, 60% of caregivers for seniors are women, and the average age is 49. Okay, so those are the people who are doing most of the caregiving of seniors. That means we need to understand what their needs are, because they're making the health decisions. Furthermore, they are more likely to pursue health resources, okay? There's a problem, there is something that you should know about being a caregiver. Generally, caregivers' health are lower than other people in the population. Their health goes down, and so they're generally much more likely to report their health as fair or poor compared to non-caregivers. And at least in the United States, nearly half of women are unmarried over the age of 65. And they're twice as likely as men to live alone by the age of 65. And they tend to have less income than men at age 65. So here are the women who are actually taking care of our seniors, and they're in a very tough situation. So this is actually a key demographic if we want to help a lot of people, not only because they have a need, but also they're the ones making the decision about health for other people. So keep that in mind if you're developing products for this demographic. All right, now, I'm going to talk about healthy aging. I'm sure everyone has heard about healthy aging. It's sort of this approach, this sort of holistic approach to aging, not just dealing with a particular disease, but dealing with the entire lifestyle associated with aging so that we can live healthier lives. And remember my comment at the beginning that once we call someone a patient, it's already too late. So we want to deal with this much earlier than when someone gets admitted to a hospital. Now, a lot of people have studied healthy aging. It's actually a very hot topic right now. It's a very complex, multifaceted issue. It involves many, many things from, correct medications, good nutrition, exercise, diet, community involvement, social involvement, emotional well-being, and so forth. There's many, many parts to healthy aging. This is why we think we have an opportunity to make a big impact on healthy aging. Now, in most people, when they get older, they have two options. They have the option of going to a facility to live out their senior years or staying at home. And we call this age in facility or age in community. Now, age in facility is very unpopular. Most people would rather stay at home as they get older. In fact, 71% of people polled said they would rather age at home rather than going to a facility. Also, aging in a facility is extremely expensive. It's typically $200 a day for many facilities. That's an insane amount of money. You can take a cruise cheaper than that, and people actually do that instead of going to facilities. And the quality varies very widely. As you can have very good facilities and very poor facilities. And in fact, the cost makes it unavailable to a large number of seniors. So the other approach is to age in community, and this is preferred. The cost is much less. However, it does require active participation. You've got to kind of be involved in this yourself, and your children and your caregivers have to be there. And it requires access to community resources. That's really important, that you have to be a participant, and you have to have access to community resources for aging in the home to work. These are important. So I put a box around it to highlight that. So another way to think of aging community, the way that we think of it, is do-it-yourself aging. We call it DIY. Aging in community is DIY, do-it-yourself aging. So you have to kind of do everything. Well, guess what? We've never done it before. None of us, when we get older, have been old before. So it's the first time for all of us, okay? So it's not easy. So first of all, we don't know what to do, right? As we get older, we don't know, what we're supposed to do and how to do it. And where do we go? Where are these resources? And who can help me? And these are things that are not typically that we don't know these as we go into it. Now, there are sometimes social workers and people that can help you, but for many of us, and I would say the majority of us, we kind of go into it blind. There's another problem with healthy aging at home, and that is there is a very strong tendency for people to be lonely, and that leads to depression, and there's a loss of purpose, and there's in many cases no support. So we find many cases where people choose to live at home, but their family only visits them once a week, and they have no friends and very little contact with the outside world. So that's not a very good situation either. So even though we say we want to age in the community, we want to stay at home, there's some major drawbacks to it. Hard to do, we don't know what we're doing, and there's cases where we can be very depressed living at home. So it really takes a community. If we want people to age at home, it really takes a community. It's not, you can't do it on your own. You need the community around you. In a small town, maybe like Costes, maybe the community is easy to access. Maybe it's part of the culture. But I can assure you in places where I live, like LA and Orange County, it's not that kind of environment. So that's why we look to maybe digital technology can help us. Can we harness the power of social networks to help us age in community, to help us have access to our community? Now, some people I know, they don't like social networks, and they say, we should not be doing social networks. I hate Facebook, blah, 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 right? Well, that's fine, but guess what? It's here, and it's here to stay. Social networks are here to stay. They're not going away, okay? So let's figure out how we can use it to do something good. And that's the approach that we're taking. Now, you know that almost every social networking app out there, almost every one of them is designed for millennials. They're designed for young people. There's very few products in social media world that are designed for seniors, for people over the age of 40, let's say. And I think it's about time that someone made a social network for grown-ups. Actually, we did find a few social networks for grown-ups. They're mostly dating apps, you know, like finding a bride overseas or something like that. That's not what I am thinking about when I talk about a social network for grown-ups. I mean something that connects us with our community, connects us with our friends, connects us with the resources that are available to us, and allows us to share our experiences, right? Because as we get older, we have a lot to share. We've been through it. Maybe I went through chemotherapy. I can share my experiences with other people. This is a great platform for doing that. So I'd like to introduce you to a product called Iris Digital Communities. And in Iris Digital Communities, we have created a social media site that is focused on local. So the Iris, we call it Iris OC for Iris Orange County. And by the way, iris is a very beautiful but hardy flower. It's also a perennial, meaning that it blooms many times. And that's the word we now use for our demographic. We don't call them millennials or baby boomers. We call them perennials. Because perennials, it doesn't matter about the age. It's about blooming again and again, and, no matter what stage of life you're in. So our perennials can use Iris OC to share with each other, to have their friends and family help them, but also to connect to resources. And you will not believe the excitement we've generated in Orange County. Every municipality in Orange County is on board because they can share what they're doing with the stakeholders in Orange County. They can connect with their people. The major hospitals and the senior facilities are all on board. This is a one-stop location now where we can provide information, resources, as well as things like great places to eat and so forth. Now I have a video, but unfortunately that's not playing, but that's okay. I'm going to just kind of jump to the end of this part of the talk. And this is a content site. There's lots of vetted articles on healthy aging and nutrition and so forth. But there's also your social network, so you can connect with your friends and your family, and you can share stuff with them. There's vendors in Orange County, many people offering services, but no one knows about them. I have I know a lot of people who are offering the nutritional services, for example, or maybe chiropractic and so forth, but it's hard for them to reach out to people. Here's a chance for them to do that. So, and then groups, people want to form groups, whether that's your church group or your running group or so forth, where you can organize events and stay in touch with each other. Many events, whether that's a race for the cure type of event, or maybe it's a get-together for a picnic with you and your friends and so forth, and personal data. And personal data is a very important part of this because we need to manage our information. And we have this thing called the senior moment. We forget things. We like to keep that in a safe and secure place where we can share it maybe with our children to help us remember our medications and so forth. And I won't get into the details, but the architecture here is beautiful. Everyone owns their own data, and everyone has full ability to modify their data, to remove their data. We don't own the data. Unlike Facebook, where Facebook owns your data, this one, you have complete control over your data, and we have end-to-end encryption. So that means no one can, even if someone could hack in, your private data stays yours. And so there's some really nice stuff. I won't get into that technology, but it's a great products. So we are doing our beta release at the end of summer. So we'll start with beta users, and then by the end of the year, we hope to start launching this. So if you're interested, please get in touch with me, because of course we have plans to go to Iris LA, Iris San Diego, Iris San Francisco, Iris Toulouse, for example. So the future really is opportunity. We are about to enter, within the next few years, we are going to hit that inflection point, and we're going to see the exponential growth in e-health technology. We are going to get that iPhone moment. I can't predict what specific technology is going to win, but you can see it's bubbling. It's like a soup, and it's bubbling, and lots of stuff is coming out. So if you look to someone like me to tell you it's going to be this, it's going to be that, I can't tell you that. We have to all be sort of, like I say, connoisseurs of technology, because it's going to happen, and we're going to see a lot of it. And that's very exciting. It's going to be a little bit crazy and confusing, too. We have to accept that. All change is like that. But it will happen, and then we are going to see a new way of doing health where we're all participants in the healthcare ecosystem, empowered by many things, including technology. So I see this as great opportunity. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs or innovators, you couldn't ask for a better time than right now. This is the time when almost anything is possible. Of course, for every 10 people doing this, 9 are going to fail, even though they have great technology. That's just the nature of this business. But now is the time to do it. So if you can take risk and you have big dreams, then you're in the right area. So I hope that as I get older, as we all get older, we can benefit from this, and I'm sure that we will. I'm sure that we'll all see each other in the not too distant future. Come and see me in Orange County. I'd love to show you around. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup Marc Bachman. Je vous propose de rester quelques minutes avec nous supplémentaires, parce que je suppose qu'après cette présentation et ce point de vue très californien sur la vie et sur la santé, je suppose qu'il y aura beaucoup de questions pour vous. Alors, je vous demandais, ceux qui veulent poser des questions, on va se donner une petite quinzaine de minutes. Levez le bras, qu'on vous voit bien. Il y a peut-être des micros qui vont circuler et qui vont vous être apportés. Il y a beaucoup de questions, c'est bien sûr notre futur, notre santé, une organisation sociale, une vision de la société, de la vieillesse aussi derrière. Allez, qui lance les hostilités ? Oh là là, tout le monde est soufflé par la présentation. Incroyable. Allez, on est parti. Ah, des questions, je vous demanderai de vous présenter. Questions courtes, comme ça on aura des réponses courtes aussi de Madame. I ask for short questions and short answers too, please.
Hi, my name is Jacques Durand, and I have a question for you. How you imagine you're growing old? Maybe how you imagine to be in 20 years old, more forward?
How do I envision myself in 20 years?
About yourself, personally.
Yeah, well, I'm already old, and I'm getting older. But no, I imagine myself to be very social. I hope that all of us have a strong social interaction. I think probably that's one of the most important things. Yeah, maybe we travel, maybe we have some hobby, but most importantly is we have to have connection with our community. And in 20 years, maybe we'll have some monitoring device, maybe we have some implant, that sort of thing. But most importantly is we have the opportunity to be more connected. I don't know if you follow Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook. He has changed his vision for Facebook. He's also trying to make Facebook about community now. So this is a trend. We're going to see that.
D'autres questions, remarques, allez-y, levez les bras, comme ça on va pouvoir distribuer les micros également, pour gagner un peu de temps. Rien. Incroyable. Ah si, Bernard Rigaud.
Yeah, we believe that for inducing bottom-up approach when designing a health device, living lab are an important way of inducing connection between end users and designer. What's your experience, your feeling of this kind of approach using a living lab in health?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the question is sort of how do our technologists and our designers connect with the stakeholders to develop the right types of products, right? And in my experience, there's been two different approaches. The first approach is maybe conventional. A university, big institution, we do a study, we bring in some study group, and we work with physicians and so forth. That's actually a very conventional approach. And I think it works quite well. So places like this institute have a very strong role to play because you can provide that access, you can provide that scientific study. But there's another approach that's actually coming on very quickly, and that is people just go for it. They just try. They don't necessarily work with it with me. We call it throw it to the wall like spaghetti, see what sticks. And that's actually happening a lot more than you realize. These tend to be young people, developing apps and things like that. But that's the second approach that I'm seeing.
Autre remarque, monsieur là-haut.
Yes. Thank you, Mark, for this very interesting presentation. You insisted on healthy aging. What do you think, I have a simple question on that. What do you think about the theories that tells us that we will be able to live until 200 years old? Or is it a futurist point of view, or is it realistic? And is it possible living so old in good condition, in a healthy condition?
Well, I can't answer that question, but let me talk a little bit about healthy aging, because the purpose of healthy aging is not to live longer, it's to live better. So I don't mind if we live the same age. Maybe our life expectancy now is 85, and if it stays that way, that's fine. I just want those last years to be better, because we have people who by the time they're 70, they have no life. They're just hanging on for the next 15 years of their life. So the purpose of healthy aging is not to extend life, but to make life much better and healthier in those last years. So it's not enough to keep someone alive, right? We want to live, and that's what healthy aging is about. As far as living to 200, I don't know, maybe, I can't say.
D'autres remarques, questions? Lilo Bell qui ont le micro, je ne sais pas où ils sont passés là, juste par devant. Voilà, allez-y, et il y a un autre bras qui se tend un peu là-haut. Voilà.
Hi, Mark. I'm Eli Lobel from Orange Healthcare. You have not discussed the opportunities of healthy aging for new types of data to be gathered from these healthy seniors who would be willing to maybe share their data, something I would call data for good, for public health. What's your thoughts about that?
Okay, so sharing data. Actually, I didn't have time to talk about it, but the IRIS project was a collaboration through a private organization and the university. And the university's interest, our interest at the university, is for exactly that purpose. So we are going to ask members of IRIS social network to share parts of their data with us so that we can do studies and we can learn how their behavior affects their health and so forth. So absolutely, the big data is a huge tool, and we want to use it. In the case of IRIS, we want to use it in a responsible way so that people actually volunteer their data. It can be anonymized and so forth. And that's a partnership that brings the university, the strength of the university, because the university is very good at doing experimental work and studies and analysis and so forth. So in the case of, I didn't have much time to go into it, but absolutely that's a big part of it. And furthermore, the IRIS platform, and I could get into a very detailed discussion of the software, but there's an API, application programming interface, that allows devices to send data to the network as well. And if you choose to share that data with the University of California, for example, maybe we're doing a study on diabetes or something like that, then you can help us understand that better without using the same social media site that you're also using to communicate with your friends and to enjoy life. So data analytics, we all know how powerful it is. It's going to be a huge part of healthy aging, and even in IRIS, we designed that in from the beginning.
Autre question, monsieur là-haut.
Merci Marc pour ta belle présentation. C'est Momo Doussal du Sénégal. J'aimerais poser juste une toute petite question à Marc, c'est d'avoir un petit peu sa vision, comment il voit le médecin de demain, sa place par rapport à l'avancée de la technologie et le développement de l'intelligence artificielle.
Did you understand it?
I'm sorry, I did not. Yeah.
He asked you how you can imagine the doctor in the future tomorrow. What place for the doctors, including the artificial intelligence?
Oh, yes, of course. I've had some projects where we want to build AI into some of the products. So I can't predict the end game for AI because we'll always need human beings, right? And physicians are very highly trained human beings, so we'll always need them. Physicians will, of course, be more of a teammate, a team member, rather than the primary responsibility. It will be shared. In the case of AI, though, the experiences that we've had with it is for remote care, where for screening and so forth. For example, I was working on a project with the Veterans Administration, and half of their constituents are in rural areas. They don't want to live in the cities where the VA is. So they have to send someone out there, and the person who goes out there is not so skilled, lower skill. So they use the AI to help them make initial assessment. They're not doing a diagnostic. They're not allowed to do that, but they're making an assessment. And then that data can now go back so that when there's a follow-on, they have a much better sense. So already we can see the use of AI to assist in remote health and to assist in the people who work with the physicians. At the end of the day, I believe physicians will use AI. I believe they will use AI to help them to do diagnosis and even prognosis, and maybe even to guide their intervention. But I think that's a ways off. Yeah. I think there's someone over here, yes.
Yeah, thanks
Madame.
a lot for a great and inspiring talk.
Oh. Okay.
My question is, do you think the social network for elderly people is only for us in the future, or like the people that are already elderly people can also use it? And also, is there any research that shows the impact, whether it's only useful for them, or whether maybe, especially the elderly people of today, maybe they get too stressed because they have to encounter the technology and...
Right. Okay, so first of all, for IRIS project, which is the social network, we never say it's for old people. It's actually for everyone. But for this presentation, I say it. But in fact, if you go to our website, we'll never say that. We suggest it's for grown-ups. That's why we say grown-ups. We don't even say seniors. So in fact, it is for everyone. But of course, probably millennials won't be using it as much as people in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And keep in mind that many of the people involved, it's not just the person who needs the health benefit that's involved. I mean, the entire caregivers and stakeholders around them. So that's children, friends, and so forth. So absolutely, we're designing this not to be for old people, but for people who are moving into, that's why we call them perennials. We don't want to say boomers. We want to say perennials. That's everyone who can bloom many times in their life. So it's very important philosophically and for branding. Now, the second question you asked, I want to address that because it's important. Whenever I pitch this to people, and I had to raise money for this, and I have to give this pitch. People always say, well, people who are 70, they can't use this technology. Well, actually, they are changing. You'd be surprised. But it's generally true. They're going to have a harder time with it. But by the time this thing really starts going, we're really talking about a new generation of seniors. And that's who we really, we want to help people who are already 70 and 80. Probably it will be their children helping them using this social media. But the next generation is definitely going to use it.
Monsieur.
Salih Abdelaziz, thanks for your presentation. Well, I have a question. While you spoke about the interest of introducing new technology and tools for patients to improve their quality of life, I would love to know your point about the future and your vision about the tools that are developed for doctors, not for patients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the question is, what about the physicians? How's technology going to help them? And fortunately, we do have a number of projects for that. I think right now, if we can find technology that just reduce the paperwork burden that physicians have, we would already be making a big impact. So if there's a lot of where we automate mundane tasks for the physicians, then we would already make a big impact. Because I know the physicians I work with, they only have a certain amount of time to talk to their patients, and then they're spending a lot of time entering data. So even simple things like that can make a big impact. But in the future, I think I do believe we're going to have AI-assisted consultations with patients. I mean, when AI can tap into databases of hundreds of thousands of cases to assist the physician, so we will see that. But it's not going to displace physicians, it just makes them better. It's like if you flew an airplane, right? That is much better than a car, but you're still the pilot. So we'll see the same kind of thing there. Of course, there'll be a number of gadgets that monitor, for example, monitoring heart arrhythmia and things like that, or data will become a much bigger part of it. But no physician can analyze that data. It's going to have to go through AI. So I think we're going to see a lot more AI for the physicians.
Les dernières questions. Alors, hop, madame, en face de nous, puis il y aura une dernière question à côté également.
Hi Mark, thank you very much, and I really liked your part of the video games and gamification. So we do gamification for healthcare here at Play Benefit, and I'd like you to explain a bit more what you've been doing exactly, and to do the separation between what is a video game, what people as people understand them, and what is the gamification for what. So do you do it for apps? Do you do it for platforms, or you do hardware? I mean, I'd like you just to explain a bit more.
All right, so we have a specialist, that's good. So video games is actually not the correct term, that's correct. Because video games, we're really talking about, video games. What we really should be talking about is gamification. And that can be in the form of multimedia, it can be form of things that aren't multimedia, as long as we bring the principles of gamification into it. So for example, your iWatch, you can compete with your friends and so forth. You would hardly think of that as a video game, but it definitely uses gamification because it uses goal setting, it uses challenges and quantification of your activity. You asked specifically about the kind of work that we're doing. I'll give you 3 examples. One example is we do a lot of exergaming work, so that's because we have a very strong connection with the physical therapy group at UCI. So we use games to promote movement, whether that's dance movement or specific activities like in the glove. We like to use gamification and interactive multimedia, and these can be on a console or a tablet to promote specific movements. So the goal is not just to move in general, but specific movements. 2 other examples, we use gaming for balance. We work a lot with balance, and we help people with their balance, and then also for pain management. We use gamification for pain management.
Allez, les dernières questions, sachant que vous retrouverez Mark Bachman au cocktail derrière. Vous pourrez poursuivre cette conversation avec lui. Il y avait un bras ou plusieurs bras qui se levaient. Allez, madame, pour terminer cette soirée.
Du coup, je vais me faire un peu l'avocate du diable et en français. Cette surconnexion, elle ne peut pas créer de nouvelles maladies ou des choses comme ça pour des personnes âgées, selon vous?
I can't. Maybe you can translate for me.
Can this, those kind of connections create new diseases for grown-ups?
Yes. So that's the
question.
New diseases for
It's not for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's a comment.
Of course.
Okay, yeah. Are you referring to physiological disease, like from electronic exposure to electronics?
And too many connections.
Oh, just like cognitive type of maybe.
Tout à fait.
Yeah. Right now we're going to go through some bad times. Absolutely. Just like any new technology, like the World Wide Web, when it came along, you see a lot of noise. We'll call it noise. Stuff that, and you will think, oh, this is crazy. Remember in that exponential curve, it first goes through bad times, right? And we're going to go through that. We're going to see a lot of stuff that was bad. I don't know if you remember desktop publishing. That was in the 1980s. It was a revolution, but first it was terrible. I mean, people produced really ugly stuff, right? But it got better. And so to your point, absolutely, it's going to be a lot of noise, and especially for our seniors, that's not good. But we have to expect that that's going to happen, and then we'll move through it. That's why I said we have to be connoisseurs, so we have to know the good stuff and the bad stuff.
On aura la réponse dans 20 ans. We have an answer in 20 years. Merci beaucoup, professeur Bachman, qu'on peut applaudir là-dessus pour son intervention ce soir.